Katty K, the reaction, obviously, where you are right now in Davos, but especially across the rest of Europe at Donald Trump's latest actions regarding Greenland, latest threats.
Yeah, it feels, Joe, like I'm sitting here in Davos waiting for Storm Trump to arrive. And nobody really knows, is he going to come here with a message that is more conciliatory, having said he had a good conversation with Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, or is he going to come here and escalate things? I mean, if this is a kind of reality show, what's the next plot twist going to be that he's going to offer us? And really, Europeans are bewildered. But I think what they have taken on board is that this is a permanent shift. And I think that's something it's taken Europe a while to adjust to. But you just heard, I was listening to the President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, here in Davos giving the opening remarks. Here's what she said. Nostalgia is part of the human condition, but nostalgia will not bring back the old order. So Europe realizes it has to prepare to defend itself. Now it has to deal with this emergency over Greenland. And you've got President Trump attacking some of his closest allies. We've said for a while, Joe, he has a better relationship with Macron. He has a better relationship with Starmer. When he goes and releases their private communications and attacks Keir Starmer for a great act of stupidity, it doesn't do much to shore up his relationships in Europe. And all of this, as we've been saying, to the benefit of Russia, to the benefit of China.
David French, General Barry McCaffrey urging Republican intervention, used a military expression saying Trump has lost his horizon. Like a plane flying that has lost the horizon, in the clouds, inverted, upside down. Trump has lost his horizon. You have said that if you had suggested even a year ago that Donald Trump would send such deranged texts to foreign leaders saying, I'm going to invade Greenland, in so many words, because you didn't give me the Nobel Peace Prize, you would have been attacked for having Trump derangement syndrome. But the real derangement comes, in my opinion, I'd love to hear what you say, from those people who are so desperate, and it's a shrinking number, but they're there. They're so desperate to defend Donald Trump no matter what he does, even blowing apart an 80-year alliance that brought down the Soviet Union and the Berlin Wall, that they engage in the most pathetic, the most sad equivocation. Some of my former favorite columnists are doing that right now. Others engaging in anti-Trumpism, desperately anything to stop from saying that what this president is doing is so deranged as it pertains to NATO and so destructive to America and the West that they just turned their backs. And apparently Republicans in the Senate willing to do the same thing.
You know, this is going to sound strange to say, but I think there is still a sense of disbelief. I think there's still a sense that this can't be real, can it? And so I honestly, after all of this time, after January 6th, after everything, there are still people who would look at a situation like what's happening with Trump's threats and bluster around Greenland, and they still are looking at it like it can't possibly quite be real. But it's very real. This man is obsessed. He's obsessed in a way that is deranged. And I think that even if we block this effort right here, the damage he's doing right now to our alliances and relationships is incalculable, because what he is doing by acting like this without sufficient restraint yet from Congress is that he is telling our allies that in any given moment, America is one election away from electing somebody utterly deranged without all of the checks and balances that we've thought we've had for so very long. So this is a moment. It's not just if asking Congress to step up right now isn't just for this moment. Asking Congress to step up right now is about telling our allies and our alliances for future times that, yes, our system actually can hold. You can actually rely on us. And every day that goes by without Congress doing that is a day that really digs us further into what could be a generational hole.
And Katty Kay, you wonder what these Republicans who would actually let this ridiculous notion that totally upends the world order go by. Is it possible that they are in disbelief, in some sort of naive disbelief? It happened before. Pardoning the January 6th rioters, he won't do it. Tariffs, I didn't think he was going to do it. Retribution, I didn't think he was going to do it. You hear that again and again and again. He's been talking about Greenland for some time. I'm not sure Republicans can hide behind at this point. I don't think he'll really do it. Don't you think?
Yeah, I was texting with a kind of senior Republican senator over the weekend who's actually pretty close to President Trump. He said there's no appetite for military action against Greenland amongst Republican senators. I understand that Republican senators have been calling the White House, have been calling the president to try to push him in another direction. But will they speak out publicly? Will they do something to actually try and stop him? I don't hear in President Trump leaving Washington last night that he actually is backing down. I don't hear somebody who's prepared to be conciliatory on this, and the Danes aren't prepared to give it to him. So then what do the Republicans do? I mean, that's really, it's so interesting because that is the question I've been in Europe for 10 days now. The question I keep getting is, why are Republicans letting him do this when it's not in America's interest? There's no, as Anne was saying, there's no strategic interest, and the downside is enormous. I mean, what did China envy about America? Its system of alliances. That was the one thing America had that China can never get. A good, solid system of allies who will have your back. This blows up that system of allies. It forces the Europeans to make trade agreements. They just announced one, the biggest trade agreement in the world. They've just signed it with Latin America. They're about to try and sign one with India as well. So the rest of the world is accommodating in order to move away from America. This doesn't help America. So when will Republican senators actually do something or say something publicly to try and stop President Trump in something they know isn't good for the country?
This is very real. It's very real, and it's likely madness. The president and his team, they have made clear they want Greenland. Yes, force still remains down the list of possible options, but they're not ruling it out. And right now, they've activated the National Guard unit in Alaska. If you look, a lot of the DOD, DHS, social media imagery right now is all like troops in winter, sort of foreboding Greenland type imagery, perhaps. Ann Applebaum, there are no Republicans in Congress, at least not yet publicly, really putting themselves in front of this. Yeah, privately, they're communicating, hey, we don't think this is a great idea. They're trying to suggest to him, the president, what is at risk here, that even this push, even if ultimately he backs down, that it is so straining the alliances in Europe that they will never recover. They will never really be the same. And I think that's worth underscoring here is just what would fundamentally change, Anne, if this indeed does go, if the president makes this push for Greenland, if he defies these European leaders, if he shatters NATO, just how actually that would change life for Americans, including those who voted for Donald Trump?
So let's think ahead. What would it look like if the United States were to forcibly occupy Greenland? U.S. troops would land there, the Marines would come in, they would kill some Danes, maybe some Americans would die. And then what would they do the next day? I mean, if they were Russians, they would arrest all the politicians, they would shoot people for speaking Danish in the street, they would have a fake referendum to rubber stamp their presence. Is that what Americans are going to do? What is it going to look like? How are we going to force Danish people to become American? How are we going to take over their healthcare system? We're going to say no more Danish healthcare, and now you have to sign up for the ACA. I mean, think through the steps of what this looks like. Think about the disaster it would create, and then think about what some of the retaliation might look like. Europeans own lots of American bonds. Europeans have lots of American investments. American companies do enormous amount of business in Europe. Europe is our biggest trading partner. The traffic that goes back and forth, tourist traffic, traffic in goods and services and financial services and tech is the largest in the world. This is our most important trading partner. If you're going to do a crazy violent action that you are not even able to explain explain the reasoning for, and you're going to insist on doing it despite being asked repeatedly not to, then you will create a huge counterreaction, and then that will have effects elsewhere as others around the world, both friends and enemies, look at the United States and assess, right, this is not a serious country anymore.
Yeah, and you know, there are so many idiots inside the Trump administration, connected with the Trump administration, some actually in very high positions in the Trump administration that love disparaging Europe and talk about, oh, all they love to do is have conferences. They just talk. They never get anything done. And talking about the strength of Europe, I think it bears repeating, which we've done here on this show before, that the United States, obviously largest economy in the world, about 26 trillion a year in GDP. If you combine Britain and Europe, they're about 24, 25, 26 trillion. Together, we're over $50 trillion a year, our GDP. China's about 19 or 20 trillion. So we more than double China when we're united together. Russia, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 trillion, a smaller GDP than Texas. And yet you have so many people in the White House and in the Republican Party willing to just be dismissive about Europe and our alliances there. I want to ask you on a personal note, as somebody who studied in Leningrad before the Soviet Union fell, somebody who was a correspondent for The Economist for Warsaw, and actually drove from Warsaw to Germany to watch the Berlin Wall fall, and then reported on the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of communism over the next 2 years, the Soviet Union. I really want your insights, your personal insights about what you see happening right now, and seeing a president so flip about destroying an alliance that brought down the evil empire. And yes, I will call it the evil empire because it was. And doing so, he says, because he was not awarded Nobel Peace Prize.
The destruction of the Soviet Union, and then also the incorporation of Central Europe into the rest of Europe, the reintegration of the former communist bloc into Europe and into the transatlantic alliance, was the biggest political and economic success of the last 30 years. We took former enemies, we made them allies, we expanded prosperity, we brought peace to a region that had been historically full of violence and conflict. We changed the map of the world. It was an unbelievable success. And by doing what he's doing, President Trump is undermining that success and maybe even will end in rolling some of it back. What he's saying is, I don't care about any of that. Anybody can attack Europe. I'm not interested in it anymore. He's undermining what the United States stood for so long and what we were able to achieve.
Yeah, staff writer at The Atlantic, Anne Applebaum, thank you very much. Her latest piece is available online now. And Katty Kay, I'd love to get some final thoughts for you before you go. The U.S. is respected around the world, much because of the alliances that were created over decades and decades, strategic alliances that really keep the world order together as much as possible. And one thing Donald Trump doesn't like, if you study Trump over the years and study his first term, is being laughed at. And yet, this move seems so utterly self-destructive. Your thoughts?
I don't think, Mika, that people here are laughing at him. I think they are afraid. And they're partly afraid because the options are pretty limited for Europe. I mean, we've just heard the President Ursula von der Leyen, say that they're going to respond proportionally in a way that is unified, and they will retaliate if necessary. But Europe's whole security infrastructure is so tied in with America. European countries can't use their F-35s if they don't have access to America's advanced communication systems. Britain depends on Europe for part of its nuclear deterrence. There's so much that we need from the United States, and Europe isn't ready to stand alone. I think it's got the message. It might have to stand alone. And the sadness here, I think, is a realization that they can't really trust America anymore to be the friend and ally they have been, whoever is elected in 2028, that this has produced a fundamental shift in the relationship, and America isn't quite reliable. It's not that reliable beacon of democracy and rule of law and alliances that the world has seen for the last 80 years. And I don't think people are laughing at Donald Trump. I think they're bewildered and they're afraid and they're sad.